In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a complementary line chart for a paired sample t-test in SPSS. And the example dataset is the GPA prior to learning goal setting skills and after learning how to set goals. And so we've got a time 1, time 2 design here, which is also known as within subjects. So to create the graph, I recommend going into Graphs, Legacy Dialogues, and Line Chart. And the key thing you have to know is that you want a simple chart, but you want summaries of separate variables. This is for the paired sample t-test. This is for the independent sample t-test, if you want to think about it that way. So we got to click on summaries of separate variables and then define. And we put our time 1, time 2 variables into, or pre and post, into lines represent. And you can see that you can change statistic. The default is mean. Usually that's what you're going to want to present, is the mean. If you're doing a paired sample t-test, it's a test of the difference between two means, or the mean difference scores, which is actually the same thing. And then click OK. And you'll get something that needs a bit of work. And so all we have is a line. And what you can see what's missing is some kind of marker here for the post data and a marker for the pre data. So if you double click on the chart and get into the chart editor, and if you click on add markers, the circles show up. And if you make sure these are highlighted, which they are automatically, and you go into marker, you can change the size. And I think probably something close to 10 is a good idea. And you might even change the border width to make the lines a bit thicker. And then you click OK. And then we have something that looks like this, which is obviously much more visible. Now, in the one that I showed in the textbook on these data, I changed the line. So if you click on the line, I wanted something that was broken, like a broken line here or here. It's up to you. And click OK. And you might want to change the weighting of that, maybe to 1.5. Again, you'll have to make a decision about that, what you like more, and what's more visible on the printed page. Now, I also made changes, importantly, to the scale of the y-axis. GPA runs from 1 to 4.0, and I probably should use that kind of full range in this graph. You do have to make a decision. Based on how it's presented by default in SPSS, it makes it look like the effect is gigantic. It's like setting goals is a huge effect. It does seem to have an effect on people's performance, setting goals, but it's not as big as this would suggest. This is a bit of a cheating approach to presenting your results. So let's change the minimum to 1 and the maximum to 4, which is actually the full range of GPA scores, and change the major increment to 0.5. And that's going to be the levels of change in terms of going into half GPA marks. So let's see what that looks like. And we can see that I've now got a much more less exaggerated effect presented in this chart. It's still a pretty big effect. This study seems to show that setting goals helps improve performance quite substantially, looking at it from this perspective of the line chart. We're almost there. I think you should change the number format probably to only 1 decimal place. So that's going to change these decimal places to 1 instead of 2. And I think the text style needs to be changed to about a 12-point font, and probably put it in bold as well. And we can change these, change the name to GPA. So you just have to click on it once and then click again, and you'll get the opportunity to change the word. So GPA pre, that looks pretty good. And then click on that once with your, a left click, and then click again, and you'll get to manipulate the word. And let's change the whole font size to 12 in bold as well. There we go. And now I guess the last thing, I probably should change this to, this is actually GPA. You know what, I should actually change this to just pre-goals is what I should make this look like. Pre-goals. Post-goals. That would look better. And also want to change the fill. I don't want to fill, and I don't want a border either. And so there we go. I'd probably want to change the size of this. I'll give you a tip that if you have to change the size of a chart inside a Word document, it ruins the quality of the image. So if you can copy and paste the chart equal to the size that it's going to be in the Word document, it'll be better. So make it as small as possible. Let's say 3 by 3. So I'm really shrinking this down. See, that looks quite good. And that would be ready potentially to put into a document that is ready for submission in a manuscript. You might actually make these lines a little bit thicker for it to be consistent. So double click and then click again and change that to maybe a 1. And change this one to a 1 as well. There we go. So this is pretty close to publication ready. I guess you might consider putting 95% confidence intervals on this. A lot of people want to see that. I've got mixed feelings about putting confidence intervals on means, but I certainly appreciate that a lot of people like it and find it useful. And I can see some use to it too. I just have mixed feelings about it. And I show you in a separate video how to calculate arguably appropriate 95% confidence intervals for a within subjects design, because it's a little bit different and more complicated than for an independent sample t-test, for example. So I'll show you that in a separate video.